Hello, everyone, and time for another episode of Maybe a Rambling. The Israel-Gaza violence. Joe Biden calls for a ceasefire. U.S. President Joe Biden has voiced his support for a ceasefire after 8 days of violence between Israel and Palestinian militants in Gaza. Mr. Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. is working with Egypt and other countries on halting hostilities. The U.S. again blocked a UN Security Council statement calling for a cessation of violence. The conflict is now in its second week, with little sign of ending. At least 212 people, including 61 children, have died in Gaza, and 10, including 2 children, in Israel. Israel says most of those killed in Gaza are militants, that any civilian deaths are unintentional. But Hamas, the militant group that runs the territory, disputes this. According to a White House statement, Mr. Biden encouraged Israel to make every effort to ensure the protection of innocent civilians. The two leaders discussed progress in Israel's military operations against Hamas and other terrorist groups in Gaza, it added. President Biden expressed his support for a ceasefire and discussed U.S. engagement with Egypt and other partners towards that end. It said the violence has prompted increased concern internationally. World leaders and humanitarian organizations have called for measures to prevent the deaths of residents and chaos wrought by the destruction of buildings and infrastructure. The U.S. has, for a third time, blocked efforts at the UN Security Council to issue a statement calling on Israel to stop its military offensive, stressing instead its own diplomatic efforts. Our calculation at this point is that having those conversations behind the scenes is the most constructive approach we can take, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki told reporters. In the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson spokesman said Israel must avoid civilian casualties, but expressed concern that Hamas is again using civilian infrastructure and populations as cover for its operations. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has called for an end to the fighting while speaking with Mr. Netanyahu. However, she affirmed Israel's right to defend itself against the attacks, according to a spokesman. France and Egypt are among the other nations calling for an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations has also expressed concern about the damage to infrastructure in the already impoverished Gaza Strip, home to 2 million people. It said that 40 schools and 4 hospitals have been completely or partially destroyed in recent days. It also warned that fuel supplies that were running out, threatening basic services. The World Health Organization Emergency Chief Dr. Mike Ryan said all attacks on healthcare needed to stop immediately. The outbreak of violence began after weeks of rising Israeli-Palestinian tension in occupied East Jerusalem that culminated in clashes at a holy site revered by both Muslims and Jews. Hamas, which controls Gaza, began firing rockets after warning Israel to withdraw from the site, triggering retaliatory airstrikes. Israel continued to pummel Gaza with airstrikes on Monday, and Palestinian militants launched rockets at Israeli cities. Israeli leaders have also again vowed to keep up their campaign. The armed wing of Hamas promised more rockets in return. Sirens were sounding again on Monday night in Israel, with rockets entering the south and north, close to the Lebanese border. The Israeli army said it launched artillery towards Lebanon on Monday in response to rocket fire that it failed to hit the Jewish state. At least 7 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza on Monday by the evening. Mohammed Abu Rayah, a pediatrician in Gaza, told the BBC of the devastation on the ground there. "We don't have a morgue here big enough for the killed and the dead bodies," he said. "The situation in Gaza is becoming worse and worse. The system is being collapsed and stretched because also we're complaining and suffering from the lack of fuel," he added. "We need at least 10 years more to build what has been damaged here in Gaza," he said. An Israeli tech executive and father of three, Eitan Singer, told the BBC, "It is not easy. 7 days in a row, when we go to sleep, and almost every evening, every night, we get the kids out of bed, run to shelters. We have 30 seconds to 60 seconds to find a shelter." Israel said more than 3,000 rockets have been fired into the country over the past week. It is an unprecedented number. The country's Iron Dome defense system is said to have intercepted 90% of the rockets. The Israeli emergency services have reported an overall total of 311 injuries, 6 of them severe. One person has also died of wounds sustained during riots in Israel. Clashes between Arab Israelis and Jewish citizens have left an additional 193 people injured, 10 seriously. And that's all we can say about Israel currently. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been another episode of Maybe I'm Rambling. See you guys next time.